Amara Cole boarded Flight 317 as just another passenger in a gray blazer, seeking nothing more than an uneventful trip to Washington, D.C. But when two F-22 Raptors appeared outside her window, and one tilted its wings in a military salute reserved only for the highest honor, every person on that plane realized the quiet woman in seat 12F was far more than she appeared. The flight attendant noticed her unnaturally calm composure. The young boy asked innocent questions about fighter jets, and the nervous businessman tried making small talk, but none of them knew that Amara had a past so classified that powerful people had erased her from existence 8 years ago, and before the wheels touched down again. Everyone aboard would become part of a story that would shake the Pentagon to its core and force an entire nation to confront a truth buried in the shadows. For far too long. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. The afternoon sun filtered through the glass walls of Reagan National Airport, casting long shadows across the crowded terminal. Travelers rushed past with rolling suitcases, children complained about delayed flights, and the smell of overpriced coffee mingled with jet fuel from the tarmac outside. Among the chaos, one woman moved with a different kind of energy. Amara Cole walked through the boarding gate with the steady gait of someone who had learned long ago not to draw attention. She wore a gray blazer over a simple white shirt, dark jeans, and comfortable sneakers. Her hair was pulled back into a neat bun, and she carried only a small leather backpack. Nothing about her appearance suggested anything remarkable. She looked like a consultant, maybe a government analyst, or just another professional heading to Washington, D.C. for business. But there was something in the way she carried herself. Her posture was too perfect, her awareness too sharp. When a businessman nearly bumped into her while texting, she sidestepped without looking up, as if she had sensed him coming from yards away. She found her seat on Flight 317 without checking the overhead numbers. Seat 12F, window seat, over the wing. She slid into place and immediately adjusted the air vent, buckled her seatbelt with practiced efficiency, and placed her backpack under the seat in front of her. Then she turned toward the window, watching the ground crew load luggage into the belly of the aircraft. Across the aisle, a middle-aged businessman in a rumpled suit settled into his seat with considerably less grace. He was already sweating, fumbling with his briefcase and phone. He glanced over at Amara and offered a smile. "Heading to D.C.?" he asked cheerfully. Amara turned slightly, offering a polite but distant smile. "Yes. Business or pleasure?" "Personal." The man nodded, clearly hoping for more conversation. "I'm in sales. Medical devices. Big conference at the convention center. You ever been to one of those?" "No," Amara said simply, her tone friendly but final. She turned back to the window. The businessman took the hint and busied himself with his phone, though he kept glancing her way, as if trying to figure her out. The cabin filled quickly. A young mother with a toddler settled into the row in front of Amara. The child was fussy, squirming and whining as the mother tried to soothe him. Behind her, an elderly couple bickered softly about whether they had packed the right medications. Across the aisle and 2 rows up, a young boy of about 10 sat clutching a book about fighter jets, his eyes wide with excitement. The flight attendants moved through the cabin with mechanical efficiency, checking seat belts and stowing bags. One of them, a woman in her mid-30s named Lena, paused briefly by Amara's row. She had kind eyes and a warm smile, the sort of person who genuinely cared about the passengers. "Can I get you anything before we take off?" Lena asked. "No, thank you," Amara replied. Lena nodded and moved on, but something made her glance back. There was a calmness to the woman in 12F that stood out. Most passengers were fidgeting, chatting, or scrolling through their phones. This woman simply sat, hands folded in her lap, breathing slowly and evenly. The engines roared to life, and the plane began its taxi toward the runway. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Good afternoon, folks. This is Captain Brennan. We've got clear skies and smooth air ahead of us today. Flight time to D.C. will be about 1 hour and 15 minutes. Sit back, relax, and we'll have you on the ground before you know it." The plane turned onto the runway, paused for a moment, and then surged forward. The force pressed everyone back into their seats as the aircraft lifted off the ground, climbing steeply into the afternoon sky. Amara watched the earth fall away beneath her, the buildings shrinking to toy size, the roads turning into thin lines. For a moment, her expression softened. There was something almost wistful in her eyes, as if she were remembering something beautiful and painful all at once. Then the plane hit turbulence. It started with a shudder, a bump that rattled the overhead bins. Then another, harder this time. The plane dropped suddenly, and several passengers gasped. The seatbelt sign dinged urgently, and the captain's voice returned. "Folks, we're experiencing some chop here. Nothing to worry about, but please stay seated with your seatbelts fastened." The young mother in front of Amara began to panic. Her breathing quickened, and she gripped the armrest so tightly her knuckles turned white. The toddler started crying, sensing his mother's fear. Amara leaned forward slightly. "Excuse me," she said gently. The woman turned, her face pale. "Focus on your breathing," Amara said, her voice calm and steady. "Slow inhale through your nose. Count to 4. Hold it for 2 seconds. Then exhale through your mouth for 6 counts. The plane is designed to maintain equilibrium under oscillation. This turbulence is normal. Your body just needs to match the rhythm." The woman blinked, surprised by the specificity of the advice. But something in Amara's tone was so confident, so assured, that she found herself obeying. She breathed in slowly, held it, then released. "Good," Amara said. "Again, you're doing great." After a few breaths, the woman's color returned. She managed a shaky smile. "Thank you. I hate flying." "It's okay," Amara said. "You're safe." The turbulence passed after another minute, and the plane smoothed out. Lena, who had been standing nearby, holding onto a seat, noticed the exchange. She caught Amara's eye and mouthed, "Thank you." Amara gave a small nod and settled back into her seat. Lena filed the moment away in her mind. The woman in 12F had used technical language that most passengers wouldn't know. Equilibrium under oscillation. That wasn't something you learned from a safety card. That was aviation training. About 20 minutes into the flight, Lena returned to Amara's row with a cart of beverages. "Water?" "Soda." "Water, please," Amara said. Lena handed her a bottle. Then, casually, she asked, "Have you been in aviation before?" Amara's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Caution, maybe, or recognition. "In a way," she said simply. Lena smiled and moved on, but she made a mental note to keep an eye on the woman in 12F. Amara opened the water bottle and took a sip. Then she glanced at her wrist. She was wearing an old digital smartwatch, the kind that had been popular a decade ago. It wasn't synced to Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. It didn't need to be. A faint beep sounded, so quiet that only she could hear it. She turned her wrist slightly, and the screen lit up. A single word flashed in green letters. Eagle 9. Her jaw tightened. She quickly covered the watch with her other hand and pulled her sleeve down over it. Her heart rate had increased, but her face remained perfectly calm. In the cockpit, Captain Brennan and his co-pilot, a younger man named Harris, were going through their routine checks. Harris was monitoring the radar when something caught his attention. "Hey, Captain," he said, frowning. "I've got 2 contacts on radar. Looks like aircraft traveling parallel to us. Same altitude, same heading." Brennan glanced over. "Military? Not sure. They're not squawking commercial transponders." Brennan radioed air traffic control. "ATC, this is Flight 317. We're showing 2 unidentified aircraft in our vicinity. Can you confirm?" There was a pause. Then the ATC voice came back, slightly hesitant. "Flight 317. We show no scheduled military operations in your airspace at this time. Stand by." Harris exchanged a glance with Brennan. "That's weird." Brennan nodded. "Keep an eye on them." In the cabin, the businessman leaned over toward Amara again. "You seem pretty calm for someone on a bumpy flight." Amara smiled politely. "I've been through worse." "Yeah? Like what?" She didn't answer. Instead, she turned toward the window. Her eyes scanned the sky, and then she saw them. 2 silver shapes, sleek and angular, cutting through the clouds several hundred yards away. "F," F-22 Raptors, the most advanced fighter jets in the U.S. Air Force arsenal. Her breath caught. The businessman followed her gaze. Whoa, are those fighter jets? Yes, Amara said quietly. That's so cool. Must be some kind of training exercise, right? Amara didn't respond. She was studying the jets, watching their formation. They were flying in a pattern she recognized. Skyuk formation. Tight, disciplined, deliberate. She whispered something under her breath, so quietly that no one could hear. Skyhawk formation, same code pattern. The words felt involuntary, like a reflex she couldn't suppress. The captain's voice came over the intercom again, and this time there was a subtle tension beneath his professional tone. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been asked by U.S. Air Command to maintain our current heading for identification purposes. This is purely routine. Please remain calm and seated. The cabin erupted in murmurs. The businessman's eyes went wide. Identification? What does that mean? Are we being hijacked? Amara turned to him, her voice firm but calm. No, they're just confirming something. Confirming what? She didn't answer. Outside the window, one of the F-22s adjusted its position, moving closer to the commercial aircraft. It drifted smoothly until it was nearly parallel to Amara's row, just a few hundred feet away. Then, in a maneuver that made her heart skip, the jet tilted its wings. The pilot performed a precise, controlled roll, holding the position for 3 full seconds before leveling out. A wing salute, a gesture of respect reserved for high-ranking officers or fallen comrades. Amara stared, frozen. The pilot's helmet turned slightly, as if looking directly at her through the small passenger window. She felt the world tilt. The F-22 held its position for another moment, close enough that Amara could see the faint markings on its fuselage. Then, with a roar that rattled the cabin windows, it peeled away, climbing sharply into the clouds. The second jet followed, leaving only contrails behind. Amara's hands were trembling. She clasped them together tightly in her lap, forcing herself to breathe. Her mind was racing, pulling her backward through time. For just a second, the cabin around her faded. The hum of the engines became the scream of a fighter jet. The afternoon light turned into darkness. She was standing on a runway at night, wind whipping her flight suit, smoke billowing from a wrecked F-16 behind her. A younger version of herself, face streaked with soot, was saluting a body being carried past on a stretcher. A voice crackled in her memory, distorted and urgent. Eagle 9, abort! Abort now! She blinked hard, and the vision vanished. She was back in seat 12F, surrounded by confused passengers and the steady drone of the engines. Lena appeared beside her, crouching down in the aisle. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. Ma'am, those jets, they seem to be following our route. Do you know anything? Amara turned to her, and for a moment, Lena saw something raw in her eyes. Fear, maybe, or guilt. No, Amara said quietly, but her grip on the armrest betrayed her. Lena hesitated, then nodded and stood up. She didn't believe the answer, but she knew better than to push. The captain's voice returned, and this time the strain was unmistakable. Passengers, please remain calm. We're temporarily diverting altitude per Air Command instruction. This is a precautionary measure. We'll provide updates as we have them. The businessman turned to Amara, his face pale. This isn't normal, is it? No, she admitted. But you know what's going on, don't you? You were in the military. I can tell. Amara looked at him for a long moment. Once, but not anymore. What does that mean? It means I left that life behind. Her voice was firm, but there was a sadness beneath it. In the cockpit, Captain Brennan and Harris were listening to a series of encrypted transmissions from air traffic control. The messages were clipped, official, and deeply unsettling. Flight 317. Air Command requests confirmation of passenger manifest. Specifically, seat 12F. Repeat, identify passenger in seat 12F. Harris turned to Brennan, his eyebrows raised. They want to know about one passenger? By seat number? Brennan shook his head. This is above our pay grade. Just comply. Harris pulled up the manifest on his screen and read aloud. Seat 12F. Cole, Amara. Female. Age 38. No special notes. He transmitted the information back to ATC. There was a long pause. Then confirmed. Maintain heading. Further instructions to follow. Harris looked at Brennan. What the hell is going on? I don't know, Brennan said. But I don't like it. Back in the cabin, Amara closed her eyes and tried to steady herself. Someone, somewhere, knew she was on this flight, and they were testing her, waiting to see if she would respond. The question was why? Across the aisle, in 2 rows forward, the young boy with the fighter jet book was watching her. He had noticed her looking out the window at the jets, and he had seen the way her face changed. He stood up, clutching his book, and walked over to her row. His mother called after him, but he ignored her. "Excuse me," he said shyly. Amara opened her eyes and looked at him. He had bright, curious eyes and a gap-toothed smile. The official report called it pilot error, but Amara knew the truth. The exercise had been scheduled too aggressively, pushed by commanders who wanted results over safety. She had protested. She had been ignored. And when she tried to bring it to light, she was silenced. That was when she became Eagle 9. The intercom crackled again, pulling her back to the present. But this time, it wasn't the captain's voice. It was a different voice. Male, clipped, military. Flight 317, this is Air Command. We have established visual contact. Repeat, visual confirmed. Then, after a pause, the voice said something that made every passenger freeze. Eagle 9, confirm visual. We salute you, Commander. The cabin erupted. Passengers turned to each other, whispering frantically. The businessman stared at Amara, his mouth open. "Commander," he said. "You're a commander?" In the cockpit, Captain Brennan and Harris were speechless. Brennan grabbed the radio. "Air Command, what the hell is going on? Who is Eagle 9? There was no response. Amara sat perfectly still, staring straight ahead. Her mind was a storm, but her face was a mask. She felt the weight of every eye in the cabin turning toward her. Slowly, she unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up. The movement was deliberate, controlled. She walked toward the front of the plane, ignoring the whispers and stares. Lena stepped forward, blocking her path. "Ma'am, you need to stay seated." Amara reached into her backpack and pulled out a small leather wallet. She opened it and showed Lena a badge. It was worn, scratched, and faded, but the emblem was still visible. Beneath it, engraved letters read, "Lieutenant Commander A. Cole, U.S. Air Force." Lena's eyes widened. She stepped aside. Amara walked to the cockpit door and knocked twice. Harris opened it a crack, his face wary. "Who are you?" he asked. "Someone those jets are trying to confirm is still alive," Amara said quietly. Harris and Brennan exchanged a glance. Then Brennan nodded, and Harris opened the door. Amara stepped inside and looked out through the cockpit windows. The 2 F-22s had returned, flying in perfect formation on either side of the plane. She could see the pilots clearly now, their helmets gleaming in the sunlight. "They're waiting for me to respond," she said. Brennan turned to her, his voice edged with frustration. "Who are you?" "I used to be someone important," Amara said. "Someone who saved lives and made enemies. And I thought I was done with that life." Harris pointed to the radio. "They called you Eagle 9. That's a call sign, isn't it?" Amara nodded. "And Commander?" Brennan pressed. "Lieutenant Commander," she corrected. "But that rank was erased 8 years ago. Along with me." Outside, the F-22s adjusted their formation, moving closer. One of them dipped its wings again, the same salute as before. Amara's breath hitched. She whispered, "They remember." In the cabin, Lena stood by the cockpit door, listening. She turned to the passengers and raised her hands. "Everyone, please stay calm. We're handling the situation." But the businessman wasn't calm. He pulled out his phone and started recording, muttering, "This is insane. This is going on Twitter." The boy with the jet book was watching the cockpit door, his eyes wide with wonder. "Is she a pilot?" he whispered to his mother. "I think she's more than that," his mother replied softly. Back in the cockpit, the radio crackled again. This time, a new voice. Older, authoritative, and unmistakably hostile. "Flight 317. This is General Marcus Shaw. Commander Cole, if you're on that aircraft, I need you to confirm immediately." Amara's face went pale. She gripped the edge of the co-pilot's seat. "You know him?" Harris asked. "He's the reason I disappeared," Amara said quietly. Brennan looked at her. "What do you want to do?" Amara stared out at the jets. They were waiting. The sky was waiting. And somewhere, far below, the man who had tried to bury her was waiting too. She reached for the radio, her hand trembling. Then she stopped. "If I respond," she said, "everything changes. For all of us." "Then don't," Brennan said. But Amara shook her head. "They already know I'm here. The only question is whether I face it on my terms or theirs." She picked up the microphone, pressed the button, and spoke clearly into it. "This is Eagle 9, confirming visual." The response was immediate. Both F-22s rolled into a synchronized barrel roll, their wings glinting in the sun. Then they pulled up sharply and climbed into the clouds, leaving only the roar of their engines behind. Amara lowered the microphone, her hands shaking. Outside the cockpit, the passengers watched in stunned silence as the jets disappeared. And somewhere on the ground, General Marcus Shaw slammed his fist on his desk. The moment Amara's voice faded from the radio, the cabin erupted into chaos. Passengers were standing now, craning their necks to see what was happening. Some were filming on their phones. Others were demanding answers from the flight attendants. The businessman in the rumpled suit was live streaming, his voice shaking with excitement as he narrated to an invisible audience. "You're not going to believe this, guys. There's a military commander on my flight. Fighter jets just saluted her. This is absolutely insane." Captain Brennan turned away from the cockpit controls, his face flushed with confusion and anger. "Ma'am, I need you to explain what's happening right now. My plane, my responsibility." Amara stepped back from the radio, her composure cracking just slightly. "They're trying to confirm I'm alive. That's all. That's all." Harris, the co-pilot, gestured at the radar screen. Two F-22 Raptors just performed a combat salute to a commercial aircraft. "That's not protocol. That's not anything. It's recognition," Amara said quietly, "of something I did a long time ago." Brennan crossed his arms. "And what exactly did you do?" Before Amara could answer, the cockpit door burst open. Lena stood there, slightly out of breath, her professional demeanor slipping. "Captain, the passengers are panicking. Half of them think we're being hijacked. The other half think we're in a spy movie. I need you to make an announcement." Brennan rubbed his face. "What am I supposed to tell them?" "The truth," Amara said. Everyone turned to look at her. "Tell them there's no threat. Tell them the military jets were conducting a routine identification check. Tell them we're perfectly safe." "Are we?" Harris asked pointedly. Amara met his eyes. "As long as I'm on this plane, yes." Lena studied her carefully. Something was clicking into place in her mind. "Wait, I remember a story. Years ago, about a classified operation. A female commander who saved an entire base from being destroyed, but was reported killed in action. They said she disobeyed orders to save civilian lives." Amara's jaw tightened. "You shouldn't believe everything you hear." "But it's true, isn't it?" Lena pressed. "You're her." The silence in the cockpit was suffocating. Finally, Amara nodded once. "I was her. But that person died 8 years ago. Officially." Brennan's eyes widened. "You faked your death?" "No, someone else did that for me. To bury the truth." She turned back to the window, watching the empty sky where the jets had been. "I took the fall for a mission that went wrong. A mission where I chose to save lives instead of following orders. And when I tried to expose the corruption behind it, they made me disappear." Harris leaned back in his seat. Holy hell. The radio crackled again, making everyone jump. This time it was air traffic control, their voice tense and formal. "Flight 317. We are receiving new encrypted communication from Air Command. Stand by for transmission." A moment of static, then a different voice. Younger than Shaw's. Female. Professional, but with an edge of defiance. "Commander Cole, this is Lieutenant Commander Rivera, Air Command Operations. Please be advised, your clearance code has been flagged in the system. Authorization level Echo 9 has been reinstated in military records as of 3 minutes ago." Amara's breath caught. "Echo 9? That's impossible. That code was deleted." Rivera continued. "Ma'am, I don't know what's happening either, but someone very high up just reactivated your file. You're officially alive again in the system. Brennan looked at Amara. What does that mean? It means they can't pretend I don't exist anymore. A small, bitter smile crossed her face. And it means someone's very scared right now. The radio crackled once more, and this time it was Shaw's voice again. But the smooth authority was gone, replaced by barely controlled rage. Flight 317, this is General Shaw. You are ordered to reroute immediately to Langley Air Force Base. This is not a request. Confirm compliance. Brennan reached for the radio, but Amara grabbed his wrist. Don't. I have to respond. He's a general. He's also the man who tried to have me killed. Amara's voice was steel. If we land at Langley, none of us walk off that plane with the truth intact. Harris turned pale. What are you saying? I'm saying Shaw doesn't want me found. He wants me controlled. She looked at the pilots, her eyes pleading. Please, trust me. Lena spoke up from the doorway. Captain, I've been doing this job for 12 years. I can tell when someone's lying. She's not. Brennan hesitated, then made his decision. He picked up the radio. Air Command, this is Captain Brennan. I need direct confirmation from FAA before I reroute this aircraft. We have civilians on board. Shaw's response was immediate and venomous. Captain, you are interfering with a national security operation. Comply now or face federal charges. With respect, General, I need proper authorization through civilian channels. There was a long, dangerous pause. Then Shaw said, You just made a very serious mistake. The radio went dead. Harris checked his instruments and suddenly cursed. Captain, autopilot's been overridden. I'm locked out. Brennan grabbed the controls. What? How? Remote access. Someone's taking control of the plane. The aircraft banked sharply to the left, throwing everyone off balance. Lena grabbed the door frame to keep from falling. In the cabin, passengers screamed as overhead bins rattled and drinks spilled. Amara steadied herself against the console. Shaw's forcing us to Langley. He's using military override protocols. Can he do that? Brennan demanded, fighting the controls. Technically, yes. In a national security emergency. She watched the instruments as the plane continued its forced turn. But this isn't an emergency. This is a cover-up in motion. The heading indicator swung toward Langley's coordinates. Harris tried every command he knew, but the system wouldn't respond. We're completely locked out. I can't stop it. In the cabin, the young boy's mother was crying, clutching her son. The businessman had stopped filming, his face white with terror. Other passengers were praying, holding hands, gripping armrests. Lena turned to Amara. You said we'd be safe. You promised. I know. Amara's mind was racing. Shaw had just shown his hand, and it was more desperate than she'd anticipated. He was willing to risk an entire commercial flight to keep her silent, which meant the truth she carried was worth killing for. She pushed past Lena and strode to the cabin door. I need everyone to listen to me. The frightened faces turned toward her. My name is Commander Amara Cole. I serve in the United States Air Force. Those jets you saw were acknowledging something I did years ago, something powerful people tried to erase. Right now, one of those people is trying to force this plane to land at a military base. But I promise you, nobody is getting hurt under my command again. The businessman found his voice. What are you going to do? Amara didn't answer. She turned and walked back into the cockpit, her jaw set. She sat down in the jump seat and closed her eyes, thinking. Shaw had military override access, but so did she once. The question was whether her codes still worked. What's your override protocol? She asked Brennan. Standard 9-digit with rotating authentication. But it's locked out. Give me the radio. Open frequency. Harris handed her the headset, watching her carefully. Amara took a deep breath. Then she spoke, her voice carrying the weight of command she'd once wielded. This is Commander Amara Cole, service number 77942 Delta. Call sign Eagle 9. Authorization code, Skyfall Alpha 317. 43 heartbeats. Nothing happened. Then the autopilot disengaged with a soft chime. The controls unlocked. Brennan grabbed the yoke and pulled the plane back to level flight. Holy! Harris breathed. The plane steadied, the engines humming normally. Amara released the radio button, her hand shaking. Your code still works, Brennan said, stunned. For now. Amara stood up. But Shaw knows I used it, and that means he knows I can still access military systems. The silence lasted exactly 10 seconds. Then the radio exploded with traffic. Flight 317. This is air traffic control. We show your autopilot disengaged. Confirm status. Flight 317. This is Air Command. Explain unauthorized override. Repeat. Explain override. Flight 317. General Shaw demands immediate compliance. You are in violation of direct orders. And underneath all of it, a new voice. Calm, measured, and carrying unmistakable authority. This is Air Command Secondary. Authentication Whiskey 74. General Shaw, your override has been countermanded. Flight 317 is to proceed on original flight path, pending investigation. Shaw's voice came back, tight with fury. On whose authority? On mine. This is Lieutenant Commander Rivera. I'm invoking protocol safeguard. You just attempted to reroute a civilian aircraft without proper FAA clearance. That requires immediate review. There was dead silence on the channel. Then Shaw said, very quietly, You'll regret this, Commander. Noted, sir. The radio traffic died down. Brennan let out a long breath and reset their course for Washington, D.C. Harris was staring at his instruments like they might attack him. Amara sat down heavily in the jump seat. Her hands were still trembling. She had used Skyfall Alpha, a code that technically shouldn't exist anymore. And it had worked, which meant someone in the system had kept her credentials active all these years. But who? In the cabin, the tension had shifted from panic to shocked confusion. Passengers were whispering, phones were still recording, and Lena was trying to answer a barrage of questions she didn't have answers for. The businessman pushed his way to the front. I want to know what's going on. That woman said she's military. Is she hijacking us? No, Lena said firmly. She just saved us. Saved us from what? From something worse than turbulence. Lena glanced back at the cockpit. Now please sit down. The young boy had wiggled free from his mother and was standing in the aisle, staring at the cockpit door with awe. His mother tried to pull him back, but he resisted. Is she really a commander? He whispered. Yes, sweetie. Now, come back to your seat. But Mom, Dad talked about a woman commander. The one who tried to save him. His mother froze. What? In his letters. Before he died. He said there was a black woman commander who was the best pilot he ever saw. He called her Eagle something. The blood drained from his mother's face. She looked at the cockpit door, then at her son, then back at the door. Her hands started shaking. That can't be, she whispered. In the cockpit, Amara was listening to the radio chatter die down. The various military frequencies were going quiet, but she could feel the storm brewing beneath the silence. Shaw wouldn't give up this easily. He had too much to lose. Rivera's voice came through on a private channel. Commander Cole, if you can hear me, you need to know something. The moment you used that override code, it triggered alerts across 3 commands. Your name is lighting up screens everywhere. The Pentagon, NSA, even the White House Situation Room. Amara closed her eyes. I know, ma'am. With respect, I don't think you do. Your file was marked classified top secret. Your death was signed off by the Secretary of Defense. And now you're suddenly alive on a civilian flight with proof that you can still access military systems. This is going to explode. Good, Amara said quietly. Let it, Mom. Rivera, how old are you? There was a pause. 29, ma'am. Were you in the academy 8 years ago? Yes, ma'am. First year. Then you might remember the Falcon Base scandal, when a commander allegedly went rogue and got people killed. Another pause. I remember the official story, but not the truth. Amara opened her eyes. The truth is, I disobeyed an order to bomb a civilian compound because I knew there were children inside. I flew in alone, evacuated 43 people, and lost 2 of my pilots in the process. When I tried to report that the intel was bad and the order was illegal, I was silenced. Shaw reported me dead and buried the mission. Rivera's voice was tight. Ma'am, if that's true, it is, and Shaw knows it. That's why he's desperate. Amara looked out at the clouds. He's not trying to capture me, Commander. He's trying to erase me again. Permanently. Harris turned around, his face pale. Are you saying he'd actually shoot down a civilian plane? No, too obvious. But he might force us to land, then make sure I never leave the base alive. Along with anyone who heard my story. Brennan gripped the controls tighter. This is insane. This is the price of truth, Amara said softly. In the cabin, the boy's mother had made her way to Lena. Her voice was shaking. I need to speak to the woman in the cockpit. Please. Lena saw the desperation in her eyes. Ma'am, I can't. My husband died under her command. I need to know if she's the one. Please. Lena hesitated, then knocked on the cockpit door. When it opened, she leaned in. Commander Cole? There's a passenger who needs to speak with you. Amara emerged from the cockpit and found herself face to face with the young mother. The woman's eyes were red, her hands clenched. My son says you're Eagle 9, the woman said. Is that true? Amara nodded slowly. Yes. My husband was Lieutenant David Hayes. He died 8 years ago in a training accident. But before he died, he wrote me letters. He said there was a black woman commander named Eagle 9 who was the best thing that ever happened to his squadron. He said if anything happened to him, it wouldn't be her fault. The words hit Amara like a physical blow. David Hayes. She remembered him perfectly. Young, eager, talented. He'd been one of her best pilots. And she'd gotten him killed. I'm so sorry, Amara whispered. He was under my command when you saved those children, the woman interrupted. I know. He told me about that mission in his last letter. He said you were the only one with the courage to do what was right. He was proud to fly with you. Tears stung Amara's eyes. He shouldn't have died. No, but he did it protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. Just like you taught him. The woman reached out and took Amara's hand. Thank you for trying to save him. And thank you for not letting them erase what really happened. Amara couldn't speak. She just squeezed the woman's hand, 8 years of guilt and grief pouring out in that single gesture. The young boy appeared beside his mother. Are you really Eagle 9? Amara knelt down to his level. Yes. You flew with my dad? I did. And he was one of the bravest men I ever knew. The boy's face lit up. Then he did something unexpected. He stood at attention and saluted her, the way he'd probably seen in movies. Amara felt her heart break and mend at the same time. She returned the salute with perfect military precision. Around them, other passengers were watching. Some were crying. Others looked confused. But the businessman had stopped filming, his phone hanging forgotten in his hand. The radio crackled again, and Shaw's voice returned. But this time it was different. Controlled. Dangerous. Commander Cole, this is General Shaw. We need to talk. Person to person. Amara stood and walked back to the cockpit. She picked up the radio. I'm listening. You've made your point. You're alive. You can still access military systems. Congratulations. But you're playing a very dangerous game. I'm not playing anything. You try to bury me. You failed. I try to protect national security. A concept you seem to have forgotten. I protected human lives. A concept you sold out for political convenience. Shaw's voice hardened. If you land in D.C., you'll be arrested on sight. Treason, unauthorized access to military systems, compromising classified operations. I'll make sure you never see daylight again. Then arrest me, Amara said calmly. In front of all these witnesses. In front of the cameras. Let the world see what happens to soldiers who refuse illegal orders. There was a long pause. You're forcing my hand, Shaw said quietly. No, General. I'm calling your bluff. She released the radio button and turned to Brennan. How far did he see? 20 minutes. Good. Keep this course. Don't deviate for anything. Brennan nodded, but his hands were white-knuckled on the controls. Harris was monitoring the radar, and suddenly his eyes went wide. Captain, we've got company. 6 contacts, military aircraft closing fast. Amara looked at the radar screen. The contacts were coming from 3 different directions, converging on their position. Shaw had sent more fighters. Are they hostile? Brennan asked, his voice cracking. Amara studied the formation pattern. Then her eyes narrowed. No, they're not Shaw's. How do you know? Because that's Ghost Wing formation. And Ghost Wing was my squadron. Through the cockpit windows, 6 jets emerged from the clouds. Not F-22s this time, but older F-16s and F-18s. They formed up around Flight 317 in a protective escort formation. A new voice came over the radio. Rough, warm, and achingly familiar. Eagle 9, this is Ghost Wing Leader. We heard you were back from the dead. Thought you might need some backup. Amara's eyes filled with tears. Ghost Wing Leader. Jackson, the one and only. Good to hear your voice, Commander. We've missed you. How did you? Let's just say a certain young commander named Rivera sent out an unofficial distress call, and we still remember who taught us to fly. Jackson's voice softened. We've got your 6, Eagle, all the way home. The other Ghost Wing pilots chimed in one by one, each voice a ghost from her past, each one alive and loyal. Amara leaned against the cockpit wall, overwhelmed. Her old squadron, the pilots she'd trained and led, had come back for her. Thank you, she whispered. No, ma'am, Jackson said. Thank you for everything you taught us. Now, let's get you home. The radio crackled with Shaw's voice one more time. Commander Cole, call off those aircraft immediately. They're in violation of direct orders. Before Amara could respond, Jackson cut in. Negative, General. Ghost Wing is operating under protocol safeguard. You attempted to illegally reroute a civilian aircraft. We're ensuring safe passage to the destination. I will have all of you court-martialed. Get in line, sir. We've been waiting 8 years for this conversation. And with that, the radio went silent. Flight 317 continued toward Washington, D.C., surrounded by 6 fighter jets flown by pilots who refused to let their commander disappear again. The 6 Ghost Wing fighters held their formation around Flight 317 like guardian angels carved from steel and fire. Inside the cockpit, Captain Brennan kept checking his instruments as if expecting them to betray him again. Harris was monitoring every frequency, his headset crackling with overlapping transmissions from air traffic control, military channels, and news helicopters that had somehow gotten wind of the situation. Amara stood behind the pilots, her hand resting on the back of the captain's seat. Through the windscreen, she could see the lead Ghost Wing jet, its silver body gleaming in the late afternoon sun. She knew Jackson was in that cockpit. She could picture him exactly as he'd been 8 years ago, fresh-faced and eager, hanging on her every word during briefings. Now he was protecting her. The student had become the guardian. Commander, Harris said, turning in his seat. We got a problem. ATC is reporting that our landing clearance for Reagan National has been revoked. Amara's jaw tightened. Shaw, most likely. They're saying the airspace is temporarily closed for security reasons. Harris glanced at his screen. They're trying to divert us to Dulles, but even that clearance looks shaky. Brennan looked over his shoulder at Amara. If we can't land, we've got maybe 40 minutes of fuel before this becomes a real emergency. He's trying to force us down at a military installation, Amara said quietly. If we land anywhere under his control, we don't walk away. So what do we do? Brennan's voice was strained. We can't just circle forever. Amara closed her eyes, thinking. Shaw was good at this game. He'd had 8 years to perfect the art of making problems disappear. But he was also desperate now, and desperate people made mistakes. She picked up the radio. Ghost Wing Leader, this is Eagle 9. What's your fuel status? Jackson's voice came back immediately. We're good for another hour, Commander. Plenty of time to escort you wherever you need to go. Andrews, Amara said. Can you clear a path to Andrews Air Force Base? There was a pause. Ma'am, that's Shaw's territory. That's practically handing you to him. I know, but it's also the one place where there will be enough witnesses that he can't make us disappear quietly. Every commander, every officer on that base will see us land. And some of them still remember what really happened. Jackson was quiet for a moment. Then, understood, Commander. Andrews it is. But we're not leaving your side. I wouldn't expect you to. Brennan turned around fully now. Ma'am, with all due respect, are you sure about this? Landing at a military base controlled by the man who wants you dead doesn't sound like a great survival strategy. It's not about survival anymore, Captain. It's about making sure the truth can't be buried again. She met his eyes. I'm sorry your flight got caught up in this. Yeah, well, Brennan managed a weak smile. It'll make one hell of a story. In the cabin, Lena was doing her best to keep passengers calm, but it was a losing battle. The presence of 6 military jets surrounding them had transformed confusion into full-blown anxiety. Phones were out everywhere, some recording, others frantically texting loved ones. The businessman had finally put his phone away. He sat staring at Amara, who had emerged briefly from the cockpit to check on the passengers. "You're really going to do this?" he asked. "Go back to the people who try to kill you?" "I don't have a choice," Amara said. "If I run now, Shaw wins. And everyone who died because of his lies stays forgotten." The man nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I believe you. And I recorded everything. If something happens to you, the world will know." "Thank you." The boy, David Hayes' son, was kneeling backward in his seat, watching the fighter jets through the window. His mother had her arms around him, but she was watching Amara. "Commander," she called out softly. Amara walked over. "Yes. When we land, what's going to happen to you?" "I don't know. But whatever happens, I need you to do something for me." "What?" "Take care of your son. Tell him his father's story. The real one. Make sure he knows that doing the right thing is worth any cost." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I will." The boy turned around. "Are you scared?" Amara smiled gently. "Terrified. But sometimes being brave means doing what's right even when you're afraid." The radio in the cockpit squawked urgently, and Amara hurried back. Rivera's voice was coming through, tight with stress. "Commander Cole, be advised. General Shaw has mobilized security forces at Andrews. They're preparing to take you into custody the moment you touch down." "Expected," Amara said. "Ma'am, there's more. He's authorized the use of a drone to maintain visual lock on your aircraft. It's currently holding position 3 miles out." Harris pulled up the radar, and sure enough, there was a new contact shadowing them. Smaller than the jets, unmanned, and potentially armed. Brennan cursed under his breath. "Is that thing armed?" "Unknown," Rivera said. "But, Commander, you need to understand something. Shaw has authorization pending for what he's calling a defensive response to a potential terrorist threat. He's trying to paint you as having hijacked the plane." "That's insane," Harris said. "That's politics," Amara corrected. "If he can make me look like a threat instead of a whistleblower, he can justify anything he does next." The drone moved closer, its position adjusting to maintain perfect line of sight. Amara watched it on the radar, her mind racing. Shaw was building a narrative, constructing a reality where he was the hero and she was the villain. She needed to flip that script before they landed. "Rivera," she said into the radio, "is this channel secure?" "As secure as it gets, ma'am. I need you to do something for me. Something that might end your career." There was no hesitation. "Name it." "I need you to access the classified files from the Falcon Base mission. 8 years ago. Operation Sandstorm. The real files, not the sanitized version Shaw submitted." "Ma'am, those files are black-level classified. I need clearance I don't have." "You have Safeguard Protocol active. That gives you temporary oversight authority during a crisis. Use it." Another pause. "If I do this, Shaw will destroy me." "I know, and I'm sorry. But those files are the only proof that what I'm saying is true. Without them, it's just my word against his." She heard Rivera take a deep breath. "Give me 5 minutes." The channel went quiet. Amara leaned against the cockpit wall, suddenly exhausted. 8 years of hiding, of living under a false name, of pretending the most important parts of herself didn't exist. And now, in the span of a single flight, all of it was coming undone. "Commander?" It was Lena, standing in the doorway. "The passengers want to know if they're in danger." "No more than I am," Amara said honestly. "Shaw won't risk killing civilians if he can avoid it. Too many witnesses, too much attention. But he'll risk it if he has to." Amara didn't answer, which was answer enough. Lena stepped closer. "I'll look you up while you were talking. There are old news stories, archive reports. They all say you went rogue, that you caused the deaths of 2 pilots because you disobeyed orders. That's the official story. But it's not the truth. No, the truth is I saved 43 people, including 17 children. And yes, I lost 2 pilots doing it. But I didn't lose them because I was reckless. I lost them because the intel we were given was deliberately falsified to justify a bombing that would have killed innocents." Lena absorbed this. "And Shaw was behind it." Shaw gave the order, and when I refused to follow it, he made sure I'd never be able to tell anyone why. The radio crackled back to life. Rivera's voice was shaking. Commander, I'm in the system. And oh my God, what did you find? Everything. The real mission parameters. The civilian intelligence Shaw ignored. The falsified coordinates. Video logs from your cockpit camera. It's all here. Every piece of evidence proving you were right. Amara's heart pounded. Can you secure it? Already done. I've copied everything to a secure server and flagged it with your Skyfall Alpha clearance. Shaw can't touch it without triggering an automatic investigation. Good. Now send a summary to every major news outlet, every senator on the Armed Services Committee, the Inspector General's office. Everyone. Ma'am, are you sure? Absolutely. If we're going down, we're taking the truth with us. There was a moment of silence, then transmitting now. And, Commander, it's been an honor. The honor is mine, Rivera. Thank you for your courage. The channel went dead. Harris was staring at his instruments. Commander, the drone just changed position. It's moving to intercept trajectory. Missile lock, Brennan asked, his voice tight. Not yet, but it's getting into position. Amara watched the radar screen. The drone was sliding into place, its sensors undoubtedly feeding live video back to Shaw's command center. She could picture him there, watching her face through the cockpit windows, deciding whether to give the order. The question was, would he really do it? Would he murder over 200 people to keep his secrets buried? She thought she knew the answer. Shaw had already killed before, in smaller ways. What was one more atrocity if it meant saving his career? Ghost Wing, she said into the radio. Be advised, we may have a hostile drone preparing to engage. Jackson's response was immediate. We see it, Commander. Say the word, and we'll light it up. Negative. Hold position. We're not firing first. Ma'am. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Shaw's voice returned, barely controlled. You're bluffing. Check your secure channels, General. Ask Rivera what she just transmitted. I'll wait. Another pause. Longer this time. Amara could imagine the chaos erupting in Shaw's command center as officers rushed to confirm what she'd just said. In the cabin, the businessman had moved to a window seat, filming the drone. His live stream had thousands of viewers now, the comment section exploding with speculation and outrage. Other passengers were doing the same, phones pressed against windows, capturing everything. The boy was still watching the Ghost Wing jets. His mother had given up trying to get him to sit properly, instead holding him close while he marveled at the aircraft. They're protecting us, he whispered, just like Dad protected people. His mother's tears fell silently. Yes, baby, just like Dad. The radio burst to life again, but this time it wasn't Shaw. It was a different voice, older, weathered, carrying the weight of decades of service. Flight 317. This is Colonel Frank Morrison, retired. I'm currently monitoring this channel from my home. Commander Cole, I was your CO at Falcon Base. I know what really happened on Operation Sandstorm. Amara's breath caught. Colonel Morrison? The same. I want you to know that I tried to stop Shaw back then. I tried to get the real story into the record, but I was outranked, outmaneuvered, and ultimately forced to retire early to keep me quiet. His voice grew stronger, but I kept copies of everything. Mission logs, video evidence, witness testimonies. I've been waiting 8 years for this moment. I just transmitted everything I have to the same outlets you did. Amara felt tears sting her eyes. Sir, we didn't have to. Yes, I did. I've lived with the guilt of letting you take the fall for 8 years, Commander. I'm not letting it happen again. And I'm not alone. There are a dozen other officers on this channel right now who witnessed what happened. We're all coming forward. One by one, voices join the channel. Majors, captains, lieutenants. Some retired, some still active. Each one confirming elements of Amara's story. Each one adding their testimony to the growing pile of evidence. Shaw's voice cut through the noise, desperate now. This channel is classified. All of you are in violation of. We're in violation of nothing, Morrison snapped. We're exposing war crimes, General, and you can't silence all of us. Harris turned to Amara, his eyes wide. Commander, you're winning. He can't fight this many witnesses. But Amara was watching the drone on the radar. It was still locked on them, still in firing position. Shaw was cornered now, and cornered animals were the most dangerous. "Ghost Wing," she said quietly. "How fast can you intercept that drone if it launches?" Jackson's voice was grim. "Not fast enough, Commander. If it fires, we've got maybe 2 seconds before impact." "Understood." She took a deep breath. This was it. The moment where Shaw would either back down or commit to the unthinkable. The radio went silent. No transmissions, no chatter, nothing. Just the hum of the engines and the collective held breath of everyone on board. Then a new voice. Young, female, professional. "This is Andrews Air Force Base Tower. Flight 317. You are cleared for landing on runway 21. Emergency vehicles are standing by. Welcome home, Commander Cole." Amara's knees nearly buckled with relief. "Tower, this is Flight 317. Confirm clearance." "Who authorized?" "Authorization came from the top, ma'am. And I mean the very top. You've got friends in high places." Brennan looked at Amara. "The president? Someone powerful enough to override Shaw," Amara said. "That's all that matters." The drone suddenly broke its lock and peeled away, climbing sharply and disappearing into the clouds. The threat was over. Harris let out a breath he'd been holding for what felt like an hour. "We're clear. That thing's gone." The Ghost Wing jets performed a synchronized barrel roll, a celebration of victory. Jackson's voice came through jubilant. "Eagle 9, looks like we're bringing you home after all. Ghost Wing will escort you all the way to the runway." "Thank you, Ghost Wing, for everything." "Our pleasure, Commander." "And ma'am, the sky never forgot you. None of US did." Amara had to turn away from the pilots to hide her tears. 8 years of hiding, of silence, of grief. And in one afternoon flight, it had all come crashing down, but in the best possible way. She walked into the cabin, and the moment passengers saw her face, they knew. The danger had passed. They were going to land safely. Spontaneous applause broke out. The businessman stood up and started clapping, and others joined him. Within seconds, the entire cabin was applauding, some crying, some laughing in relief. The boy wiggled free from his mother and ran to Amara, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You did it," he said, his voice muffled against her shirt. "You beat the bad guys." Amara knelt down and hugged him properly. "We all did it. Every person on this plane. Your dad would be proud." His mother joined them, and the 3 of them stood there together, united by loss and hope and the strange grace of survival. Lena approached, wiping her eyes. "Commander, that was the craziest flight I've ever worked. And I once had a passenger try to open the emergency door at 30,000 feet. Amara laughed, a sound that felt foreign after so many years. "Thank you for believing me. Thank you for saving us." Lena squeezed her hand. "Now let's get you on the ground before anything else happens." As Flight 317 began its descent toward Andrews, flanked by 6 Ghost Wing fighters, passengers pressed against the windows. Below, they could see the base coming into view. And on the runway, dozens of people were gathering. Officers in uniform, ground crews, even civilians who had somehow gotten word. They were all there to witness history. To see the commander who had been erased return from the dead. Captain Brennan brought the plane down smoothly, the wheels kissing the runway with barely a bounce. As they taxied toward the terminal, the Ghost Wing jets performed one final maneuver, a slow wing salute, before peeling off toward their own landing zone. The plane came to a stop. Brennan shut down the engines. In the sudden quiet, everyone could hear their own heartbeats. Amara stood up. "Thank you, Captain, for trusting me." Brennan nodded. "For what it's worth, Commander, I'd fly with you again any day." Through the cockpit window, they could see soldiers lining the runway, not with weapons drawn, but standing at attention. One by one, they snapped to salute. A woman in general's uniform stepped forward from the crowd. Even from a distance, Amara could see the expression on her face. Respect. Recognition. Rivera had kept her word. The truth was out. The lies were exposed. And the sky had finally answered back. The aircraft door opened with a pneumatic hiss, and a flood of warm evening air rushed into the cabin. Amara stood at the front, Lena beside her, both of them staring out at the scene unfolding on the runway. Hundreds of people had gathered. Officers in dress blues stood in formation, their postures rigid with military precision. Ground crews had abandoned their equipment to witness the moment. News helicopters circled overhead, their cameras capturing everything. And at the center of it all, a woman in a general's uniform stood waiting, her hand raised in salute. Lieutenant Commander Rivera, promoted on the spot, Amara guessed, or perhaps simply respected enough that everyone deferred to her authority. "Are you ready?" Lena asked quietly. Amara took a deep breath. "I've been ready for 8 years." She stepped onto the boarding stairs, and the moment her foot touched the first step, every soldier on that runway snapped to attention. The salutes came like a wave, rippling through the crowd. Officers who had never met her. Young enlisted personnel who probably didn't even know her story. Veterans who remembered. All of them saluting. Amara's eyes stung with tears, but she held her composure. She descended the stairs slowly, each step feeling like a mile. Behind her, passengers were emerging, phones out, recording everything. The businessman was crying openly now, still live streaming. The boy and his mother stood at the top of the stairs, watching. When Amara reached the tarmac, Rivera approached and lowered her salute. Up close, she was younger than Amara had expected. Late 20s, maybe 30. Her eyes were red-rimmed from stress or tears or both. "Commander Cole," Rivera said, her voice tight with emotion. "Welcome home." "Commander Rivera," Amara replied. "Thank you. For everything. I only did what should have been done 8 years ago." Rivera glanced over her shoulder at the crowd. "There are a lot of people here who want to speak with you. But first, I need to inform you that General Shaw has been taken into custody. Military police arrested him 20 minutes ago on charges of falsifying mission reports, unauthorized use of military assets, and attempted murder of civilians." Amara felt the words wash over her like rain after a drought. "He's actually in custody?" "Yes, ma'am. The evidence you and Colonel Morrison provided was overwhelming." The Inspector General moved immediately. Rivera's expression hardened. "He's finished. His career, his reputation, everything. Gone. Good." The word came out harder than Amara intended, but she didn't regret it. A commotion erupted near the terminal building. 6 pilots in flight suits were jogging across the tarmac, their helmets tucked under their arms. "Ghost Wing." Jackson reached her first. He was taller than she remembered, his face weathered by years in the cockpit. But his grin was exactly the same as it had been when he was a rookie under her command. "Commander," he said, snapping to attention and saluting. Amara returned the salute, then broke protocol and pulled him into a hug. "You crazy fool. You could have been court-martialed." "Worth it," Jackson said, his voice muffled against her shoulder. "Besides, they'd have to court-martial all of us. And that's a lot of paperwork." The other Ghost Wing pilots crowded around, each one offering salutes that turned into embraces. Daniels, a woman who had been Amara's youngest pilot. Cooper, who had crashed during training and been grounded until Amara fought to get him recertified. Martinez, Thompson, and Williams, all of them bearing the marks of years in service, but still carrying the fire she'd helped kindle. "We never believed it," Daniels said, wiping her eyes. "When they said you died, we knew it was wrong. You wouldn't go out like that." "I did die," Amara said quietly. "Or at least the person I was died. I've been hiding ever since." "Not anymore," Cooper said. "The whole world knows your name now, Commander." As if to punctuate his words, a roar went up from beyond the security fence. Civilians had gathered there, drawn by news reports and social media. They were cheering, holding up signs, some with her name, others simply saying hero and truth. Amara stared at them, overwhelmed. She had imagined this moment in 1,000 different ways over the years. Vindication, justice, recognition. But she had never imagined it would feel like this. Like being seen after being invisible for so long. A black SUV pulled up, and 2 men in suits emerged. Secret Service, Amara realized with a jolt. One of them approached Rivera. "Commander Cole needs to come with us. Presidential orders." Rivera looked at Amara, who nodded slowly. "It's okay. We'll be here when you get back," Jackson promised. Amara climbed into the SUV, and it pulled away from the runway, leaving the chaos behind. They drove through the base in silence, the agents offering no explanation. Finally, they stopped in front of the base commander's office, a nondescript building that looked like every other military structure Amara had ever seen. Inside, she was led to a conference room. A large screen dominated one wall, currently dark. The agents left her alone, closing the door behind them. She waited, her heart pounding. The screen flickered to life, and suddenly she was looking at the Oval Office. The President of the United States sat behind the resolute desk, flanked by the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Amara stood at attention automatically. The President smiled, a genuine expression that reached his eyes. "At ease, Commander Cole. Please sit." Amara sank into a chair, her legs suddenly weak. "I've just finished reading the classified files that Commander Rivera uncovered," the President said, along with Colonel Morrison's testimony and the statements from nearly 24 witnesses. "I've also watched the footage from today's flight. Commander, what was done to you was unconscionable." "Mr. President," he held up a hand, "let me finish. You were ordered to commit what amounts to a war crime. When you refused and instead chose to save innocent lives, you were punished for it. Erased from history. Made to disappear." His expression hardened. "That is not how this nation treats its heroes." The Secretary of Defense leaned forward. "Commander Cole, as of this moment, your rank is fully reinstated. Furthermore, you are being promoted to full commander with immediate effect. Your service record will be corrected to reflect the truth of what happened at Falcon Base." Amara felt tears streaming down her face. She couldn't speak. The chairman, a grizzled 4-star general, spoke next. "Commander, you saved 43 lives that night. 17 of them were children. 2 of your pilots gave their lives helping you do it. That is not a failure. That is the very definition of valor." The President nodded. "In recognition of your actions, you are being awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Defense Superior Service Medal, and—" he paused, letting the weight build, "the Medal of Honor." Amara's breath left her body. The Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration, reserved for those who showed conspicuous gallantry at the risk of their own lives. "Sir," she managed, her voice cracking, "I don't deserve." "You do," the President said firmly, "and the nation will know it. We're scheduling a public ceremony at the White House. You'll be recognized properly, publicly, and permanently. No more shadows, Commander. No more hiding." "What about the families?" Amara asked. "The pilots who died, Hayes and Richardson, their families will also be honored. Their records will be corrected, and they will know that their sons died as heroes, not as mistakes in a failed mission." The President's expression softened. "I understand you met Hayes' family today. His son is on the plane. He's 10. Then invite them to the ceremony. Let that boy see his father's name cleared." Amara nodded, unable to trust her voice. The President stood. "Commander Cole, you did something most people never have the courage to do. You chose principle over career, truth over safety, levs over orders. This nation owes you a debt it can never fully repay. But we're going to try. Welcome back, Commander." The screen went dark. Amara sat alone in the conference room for several minutes, trying to process what had just happened. 8 years of exile ended in a single conversation. 8 years of guilt transformed into recognition. 8 years of wondering if she'd made the right choice finally answered. She had. When she emerged from the building, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The crowd on the runway had grown even larger. News crews had been allowed onto the base, their cameras creating a forest of lights and equipment. Rivera was waiting for her. "Commander, we need to debrief you properly, but that can wait until tomorrow. Tonight, you should rest." "I need to see the passengers first," Amara said, "especially the Hayes family." They found them near the terminal, surrounded by other passengers who were giving statements to military investigators. The boy saw Amara first and broke away from his mother, running toward her. "Did you talk to the President?" he asked breathlessly. "Everyone's saying you talked to the President." Amara knelt down. "I did, and I told him about your father, about how brave he was." "What did he say?" "He said your father was a hero, and he's going to make sure everyone knows it." The boy's face lit up like the sun. His mother approached, her expression a mixture of joy and grief, so profound it was hard to look at directly. "Thank you," she whispered. "David's been dead for 8 years, and until today, everyone thought he died because of pilot error, because he wasn't good enough. But he was. He was amazing. He was," Amara agreed. "And now the world will know." She stood and addressed the boy formally. "Your father, Lieutenant David Hayes, is being posthumously awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for valor. There will be a ceremony at the White House. I would be honored if you and your mother would attend as my guests." The boy didn't understand the full weight of the words, but he understood enough. He saluted again, that same clumsy, heartfelt gesture from the plane. This time, when Amara returned it, she felt something shift in her chest. A weight she'd been carrying for 8 years, finally lifting. 3 weeks later, Washington, D.C. was transformed. The White House South Lawn had been set up for a ceremony unlike any in recent memory. Hundreds of chairs arranged in perfect rows, a stage with a podium bearing the presidential seal, and an honor guard standing at attention. News crews from every major network were present. The story of Commander Amara Cole had dominated headlines for weeks. The commander who had been erased, who had been on a routine flight when her past caught up with her at 30,000 feet. The jets that saluted her. The general who had tried to silence her and was now awaiting court-martial. The truth that refused to stay buried. Amara stood in a White House anteroom, wearing her dress uniform for the first time in 8 years. The decorations on her chest were new, gleaming, but somehow felt ancient and heavy with meaning. Rivera was with her, also in dress uniform, having been promoted to full commander for her role in exposing the truth. "Nervous?" Rivera asked. "Terrified," Amara admitted. "I've flown combat missions that were less stressful than this." "You'll be fine. You've already done the hard part. This is just the victory lap." Through the window, Amara could see the crowd gathering. She spotted Ghost Wing, all of them in dress uniforms, sitting together. Jackson caught her eye and waved, grinning like an idiot. Colonel Morrison was there too, walking with a cane but standing tall. He'd become something of a media sensation himself, the retired colonel who had kept evidence for 8 years waiting for the right moment. His testimony had been crucial in Shaw's arrest. And there, in the front row, sat the Hayes family. The boy wore a suit that was slightly too big for him, probably borrowed for the occasion. His mother had her arm around him, but she was smiling, really smiling. Next to them were the Richardsons, the family of the other pilot who had died. Amara had met with them last week, a gut-wrenching conversation where she'd apologized for their loss, and they'd thanked her for finally telling the truth. She still wasn't sure how to process that. The passengers from Flight 317 had been invited too. Lena was there, and Captain Brennan and Harris. Even the businessman, who had turned his live stream footage into a documentary that was being hailed as essential viewing. "It's time," an aide said, poking his head into the room. Amara took a deep breath and followed him out. The moment she stepped onto the lawn, applause erupted. Not polite ceremony applause, but genuine, thunderous appreciation. People were standing, some were crying. She walked to the stage, feeling like she was floating, the noise washing over her like a physical force. The president was already at the podium. He waited for the applause to die down before speaking. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today to correct a grave injustice. 8 years ago, a commander in the United States Air Force was faced with an impossible choice. Follow orders that she knew were wrong, or do what her conscience demanded. She chose conscience. She chose humanity. And for that choice, she was punished." The crowd was silent now, hanging on every word. Commander Amara Cole saved 43 innocent lives, including 17 children. She did this at great personal cost, losing 2 of her own pilots in the process. And when she tried to report that the intelligence justifying the mission was false, she was silenced, erased, made to disappear. The president paused, his expression grave. But the truth has a way of resurfacing. And thanks to the courage of Commander Cole, Commander Rivera, Colonel Morrison, and many others, the truth has finally come to light. He gestured for Amara to join him at the podium. She walked forward, her legs steady despite her nerves. Commander Amara Cole, the president said formally, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of your life above and beyond the call of duty, it is my honor to present you with the Medal of Honor. An aide brought forward a blue velvet case. The president opened it, revealing the distinctive medal with its star and light blue ribbon. As he placed it around her neck, cameras flashed like lightning. The crowd erupted again, the applause mixing with cheers and shouts of support. But Amara wasn't looking at the crowd. She was looking at the Hayes boy, who was standing now, his hand over his heart, his face shining with pride. The president stepped back to the microphone. This ceremony is not just about Commander Cole. It is also about the brave pilots who gave their lives helping her save others. Lieutenant David Hayes and Lieutenant Marcus Richardson are being posthumously awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. Their families will receive these honors today. The Hayes and Richardson families came forward. The president presented each family with their medals, speaking words of comfort and recognition. When he placed the medal in the young boy's hands, the child looked at it like it was made of starlight. After the official ceremony, there was a reception. Amara found herself surrounded by well-wishers, reporters, and military brass who either wanted to congratulate her or distance themselves from Shaw's faction. Ghostwing found her first, as always. Jackson lifted her off the ground in a bear hug that made her laugh despite the formal setting. "You did it, Commander," he said. "You actually did it." "We did it," she corrected. "All of us." Daniels was crying happy tears. "I can't believe we're here. I can't believe this is real." "Believe it," Cooper said. "Our commander came back from the dead and took down the bad guys. That's our story, and we're sticking to it." Rivera approached with Colonel Morrison. The old colonel was using his cane but refused any other assistance. He looked at Amara with eyes that had seen too much but still held warmth. "Commander," he said simply, "I'm sorry it took so long. Sir, you kept the evidence safe. You made this possible. I should have fought harder at the time. You fought when it mattered most." Amara embraced him carefully, mindful of his age. "Thank you, sir." The Hayes family approached, and the crowd instinctively gave him space. The boy was clutching his father's medal like a treasure, his eyes wide. "Commander Cole," his mother said, "I wanted to thank you for everything, for trying to save David, for making sure people know the truth about what he did, for giving my son a father he can be proud of. He always had a father to be proud of," Amara said. "I just made sure everyone else knew it too." The boy stepped forward. "Commander, when I grow up, I want to be a pilot like you and my dad." Amara knelt down to his level, the Medal of Honor swinging forward on its ribbon. "Then I'll make you a promise. When you're old enough, when you've trained hard enough, you come find me, and I'll personally make sure you get your wings." "Really? Really? Your father was one of the best pilots I ever trained. I have a feeling you'll be even better." The boy's smile could have powered a city. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the White House lawn, Amara found a quiet moment to step away from the crowd. She walked to the edge of the lawn, looking up at the sky. 2 contrails were visible, jets passing overhead in the evening light. She watched them, thinking about everything that had happened. The flight that changed everything. The truth that refused to die. The people who had risked everything to help her. Footsteps approached behind her. She turned to find the president, flanked by minimal security. "Quite a view," he said, looking up at the contrails. "Yes, sir." "Commander, I have a question for you. Now that your name has been cleared, now that you've been recognized, what do you want to do?" "You could return to active duty, command a squadron, train the next generation. Anything you want." Amara considered this. A month ago, she had been nobody, a passenger in seat 12F, living under the radar, trying to forget who she'd been. Now she was standing on the White House lawn wearing the Medal of Honor, her story known to the world. "I want to teach," she said finally. "Not at the academy. Somewhere smaller, where I can work with young pilots one-on-one. Help them understand that being a good officer means more than following orders. It means knowing when to question them." The president smiled. "I think that could be arranged. The Air Force is establishing a new ethics and leadership program. They need someone to run it, someone who's been tested and didn't break." "I'd be honored, sir." "Good." He extended his hand. "Thank you, Commander, for your service, for your sacrifice, and for reminding us all what true courage looks like. They shook hands, and then the president departed, leaving Amara alone with the sky. She heard footsteps again. This time it was Lena, still wearing the same dress she'd had on during the ceremony. "Hey, Commander," Lena said. "I'm heading out, but I wanted to say goodbye." "You don't have to call me Commander. We're not on a plane." Lena smiled. "I know, but you'll always be Commander to me. The woman who saved our flight and changed history." She paused. "For what it's worth, I'm glad I was there. I'm glad I got to see it happen. Thank you, Lena, for believing in me when you had no reason to." "I had plenty of reasons. You just showed me who you were." Lena hugged her quickly, then pulled back. "Stay in touch, okay? And if you ever need a flight attendant for that teaching program, you know where to find me." As Lena walked away, Amara felt her phone buzz. A news alert. She opened it and saw her own face staring back at her, the headline reading, "The commander who wouldn't stay dead. How one flight changed everything." Below it, videos from the ceremony. Photos of the Ghost Wing salute. Interviews with passengers from Flight 317. The businessman's documentary trailer. Colonel Morrison's testimony. All of it, the entire story, spreading across the world. The truth, refusing to be buried. 6 months later, Amara found herself at a small airfield in Virginia. The Leadership Academy she now ran occupied a modest building with classrooms, simulators, and direct access to the runway. Young pilots came from all branches of service to train under her guidance. Today was graduation day for her first class. 20 pilots who had spent 6 months learning not just how to fly, but how to lead, how to question, how to stand up for what was right even when it cost them. As she watched them receive their certificates, she noticed a familiar face in the audience. The Hayes boy, now a bit taller, still wearing the same determined expression. His mother waved at Amara from across the field. After the ceremony, the boy approached her. "Commander Cole, I start training next month." "For real training. My mom said I should tell you. Are you ready?" "I think so. I've been studying everything. Flight mechanics, navigation, tactical theory. I want to be ready when it's my turn." Amara smiled. "Your father will be proud, and so am I. Will you really train me?" "When I'm old enough. I promised, didn't I? And I keep my promises." As the sun set that evening, Amara stood on the runway, watching her students practice takeoffs and landings. The roar of engines filled the air, that beautiful sound of possibility and freedom. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Jackson. "Ghostwing flying over your location in 5 minutes. Look up." She did. 6 jets appeared on the horizon, flying in perfect formation. As they approached, they split and reformed, tracing her signature skyhawk pattern across the sky. Then, as they passed directly overhead, they performed a slow wing salute, the same gesture that had started everything on Flight 317. Amara stood alone on the runway, her hand raised in salute, tears streaming down her face. Around her, her students stopped what they were doing and joined her, all of them saluting the sky together. The jets climbed higher, their contrails painting lines of white against the deepening blue. And for a moment, just a moment, Amara could swear she felt David Hayes and Marcus Richardson up there with them, finally at peace. She lowered her hand and whispered to the sky, "Clear skies, Eagle 9. The jets disappeared into the clouds, leaving only the echo of their engines and the promise of tomorrow. Far away, on another commercial flight, another passenger sat in seat 12F. Another story waiting to be told. Another life waiting to be changed. But that was someone else's journey. Amara Cole had finally come home. If you were given the choice between following orders you knew were wrong or saving innocent lives at the cost of everything you'd ever worked for, would you have the courage to do what Commander Cole did? Hit that like button if this story moved you, and subscribe for more incredible, true stories of ordinary people caught in extraordinary moments.